welcome to Every Game is Awesome, or not. In this series, we'll be taking a look at usually what we call Eurogames. This is a spot that I'm not always so keen on, although I like a lot of them. But Jason is usually a bigger fan of.
Usually.
So we're bringing in his expertise, so this way, if we both say a game is great, you know it's great. If we both say a game is horrible, then you know you want to stay away. But more often than not, we'll probably have some different smattering of opinions, so you can find more about the game in that regard. Today we're taking a look at Nippon, which is a game about the industrialization of Japan. I believe it's in the 1800s or whatever. I don't know when it is. This is from What's Your Game? They have done games in the past. You may have remembered that once I reviewed their game called Vasco da Gama. And their games have a very similar feel to them. They're very strong Euro games. The theme is usually a secondary feature. Would you argue that?
Yeah, they're usually heavy games where the theme is secondary.
All right. Well, let's take a look at how the game plays first, and then we'll tell you what we thought. The board shows a map of Japan, and the map is split up into 4 regions. Each region has 2 cities, and these cities are going to want 4 different goods out of 6 possible goods. And these tiles are randomly placed at the beginning of the game, and the orientation does matter. There's a bunch of workers that are of different colors that are thrown in a bag. These are randomly placed, not only here, but also down here. Now, what players are going to do on their turn is you're going to take an action. The actions are listed up here. There's 9 different actions. So a player will take an action by taking one of the workers over that action, and then they can do one of the 2 actions underneath there. When the last worker is taken from an action, then the first group comes over here like this. When the last group goes away, this moves up 1. And the second time it moves, there's scoring. The 5th time it moves, there's scoring again. After that, it's going to move every turn until the final scoring. And so, as players are doing this, they're going to be putting these on their player board. Now, you can see the player board up here. As players take a worker when performing an action, they're going to be placing that worker here, like this. Now, players can take a consolidate action anytime they want on their turn. Instead of taking a worker and adding it here, they can clear all their workers and throw them back in the bag. They will refill here. Each player is going to be keeping track of their income and how much coal they get. So at the beginning of the game, if they consolidate, they're going to get 2 coal here, and they're going to get 12,000 yen placed there. But as these tracks move upward, they're going to get more there. This is cleared, though. They also have to pay 3 for each color they have here. So the fewer colors, the better. And then finally, depending on how far this is across, they're going to get a bonus tile. If this is completely full, players must consolidate as their action. Many of the actions involve paying money. You can pay 1, 3, or 6 to move up 1, 2, or 3 spaces on the coal track, or do the same thing over here on the knowledge track. You can buy a new factory. You can produce at a factory. You can fulfill a contract. You can buy 1, 2, or 3 ships or trains and place them on the board in different spots. You can upgrade your factories, or you can ship things from your factories and place things on the board. There are 6 different types of factories for the different resource types. Players are allowed to have 1 of each type of factory. Now, when players buy a factory, the cost of each factory is on the back, and that's how much knowledge you need. You also have to pay 6,000 to get a factory of yen, but you also need at least that much knowledge. So you need to be that far on the knowledge track. So you need to have reached a 2 to get there. If you are not there, then you can pay blueprints. This is like a currency that can temporarily add to your knowledge so you can get the factories. When players buy a factory, that factory is going to produce. Later on, they'll be able to produce in that factory by paying a certain amount of coal that's shown on the factory piece, and then put a cube on here. Players will also be able to upgrade the factory to a +1 and then a +2, and that simply means when you produce at that factory, instead of getting 1 resource, you'll either get 2 or 3 resources placed on that factory. Each factory also has a special ability that has to do with something. So for example, this one here, you immediately move up 2 on the knowledge. This one here, anytime you move on a knowledge track, you move an extra spot. This one here, you immediately get 2 free blueprints. This one here, when you move up on the knowledge track, it's cheaper. And each of them has something different that they can do. Players are going to use the resources on these factories to be able to put tiles out on the board to control different areas. So when a player does that, let's say, for example, they have 3 in the white factory, 3 cubes. So they discard those 3 cubes, and they get to put out a 3 tile. Each player has tiles that are 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7. And so they only have 1 of each tile. So when they do that, let's say I put out 3 white cubes, and so now I could put out the 3 tile. So I take my 3 tile, and I have to put it where there is a company, a city that wants that type of resource. So maybe I'll put it over here, covering up the neutral number. During a scoring phase, each region is going to be considered completely. So if in this region, you can see in this region here, I have a total of 4. The neutral player has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they are winning that region. However, if I place a train in an area on a region, that gives me +2 to that entire region. And if I place a ship, I have a chance to get more victory points. The scoring is over here. This is the first, second, and third scoring. Whoever has the most in the region gets the first amount of points, which could be neutral, so no one might get those points. Then second and third. And first and second place will also score points for any ships they have, which are normally 2 per ship, but one of the factories lets you flip a ship over and make them 3 points each. Players also have 8 different contracts that they can try to perform over the course of the game with one of the actions. Each contract simply needs cubes from different resources. So 2 from one resource, 2 from another, 1 from another will give me 9 points and will move me up 1 on the income track, while 3 cubes of one type gives me 4,000 yen and moves me up 3 on the income track. Whenever a player consolidates, I said they can get a bonus tile if they've gone far enough in rows 2, 3, 4, and 5. They'll take a bonus tile of their choice, which will give them some instant benefit. So for example, they get 5,000 yen, or they get 2 contracts, or 2 coal cubes. They'll then flip it over, and this becomes a multiplier. This multiplier is going to be placed on their board. This is going to be used for final scoring. So maybe I'll put it here, and at the end of the game, I will get 4 times the number of ships that I have out on the board. Some of these already have multipliers on, like this gives you 1 for every 6,000. But if I put this here, I'd get 4 points for every 6,000 at the end of the game. Here, points for however many stars you're up to on your coal track, or how many stars you're up to on your knowledge track, or for every 2 contracts, or for every different region you're in, or for every train on the board, or for every different type of the 4 biggest type of factories, or for every factory that you've upgraded to level 2. So after the final scoring is done, which is the area control, you will add that to points that players have scored throughout the game. Players will also get points for these areas here, and whoever has the most points is the winner.
All right. Well, before we get into the nitty-gritty things, we can talk about things like components and artwork and stuff. And I would say it's okay. It's not fantastic, but I don't think it's bad either.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think the map is very functional. I like the map of Japan. I like the functionality. I like how the wooden pieces, the people's pieces are all there, and everything's right on the map. So you have a small map. You don't have a big footprint with this game, which I think is a good thing.
The only problem that I have with the components is I wouldn't have minded in the map if they had maybe made the different regions slightly different colors.
Yes, because you can't tell where one end and one begins.
Well, there's lines, but it's just not as obvious.
Yeah.
And also the contracts and the bonus tiles were like all the same color. I would have made, I don't know, just some minor little things. Now, for the gameplay itself, this is a box of mechanisms. It really is.
Yes, yes.
So the question is, are these mechanisms good or bad? So let's go through a couple of them. First of all, there's the main mechanism of the game, which is those colored little dudes that, you need to have as many of the same color as possible.
Yes.
I really highly disliked this concept at the beginning, the first time we played. As time went by, I still mildly dislike it because it's so non-thematic. It makes no sense. What are you trying to get all the same kind of people? That just doesn't make sense to me.
See, to me, I really like the mechanic. I liked it because I thought of it, if you have to add a theme onto it, which I don't think you need to, but if you do, you can say, okay, all the pink workers are, electricians. So the more electricians I hire, they become cheaper in price because I'm hiring lots of electricians, so I can get each one for a cheaper price. But if I only hire one mechanic, the black piece, for example, now that mechanic's going to charge me a lot more because I only hired one mechanic instead of 10 mechanics. So I kind of, if
You're
you want
really,
to theme
really
it,
extrapolating theme onto that there.
that's if you want to theme it. If not, I do like the mechanic, though. I like the mechanic because what it does is it forces you to make a choice. Do I take something from the same color to have less colors, or do I take something of a different color, but I want an action I really want? So it makes you have a tough choice of, do you want the action, or do you want to match your colors and take a lesser action to match your colors?
I found that after a while, I just gave up on the color thing and just went for the action I wanted. I mean, it almost was like you're being penalized sometimes because there's a good amount of luck in that regard. Because sometimes it's like, oh, those are the actions I want, and they're all the same colors. Yeah! Which I think is almost too much luck in that regard.
I didn't feel there was luck because the way the board is laid out, you have the pieces on the top, but you also see what the next 7 groups of 3 pieces are. So you see exactly what's going to come out next. So you can see if there's a lot of red in the what's coming out next.
I understand it, but sometimes it's still lined up for you.
Yeah, but you could force it. Like, I forced it to line up for me a few times when we played by seeing what was coming out, and I would take a red piece knowing that more red would come out, and then if this one unfilled and that filled with red and this one unfilled and that filled with red, I could take it from either, and then I could take the action I liked. So I tried to work around what I saw was coming up.
The next mechanism in the game that I really did enjoy were the different factories. I thought that was a cool idea. I thought it was neat that each person would have a factory that gave them a special ability. Whether that ability was to run the factory cheaper, no special ability, but it was cheaper to run, or whether it gave you some sort of, move up on a track extra. I really enjoyed that, and I also liked how that worked into producing the goods. It was a very simple process. I'm not the biggest fan of using the same black cubes for everything, like they're coal and they're the goods.
Yes.
But it's not a huge deal, but I thought the factory part was fun.
I did too. I like the uniqueness. So if you really want your choice, you pick what you think is the best. I went first picking, I think, 3 of the factories, so I picked the one that I thought was the best. Whether or not it was or wasn't, I felt like, oh, I'm getting the first choice, so I'm getting the best one. And
well, I think some are clearly better than others.
Yeah, and by picking it first, you get that. But you have to make sure you keep enough money, because they cost 6,000 yen, since it's in yen this game. They keep 6,000 yen, they cost that each. So you have to make sure you have enough money that you can buy the factories when you want to. And you have to make sure your knowledge level goes up that you can buy them. But I really like the uniqueness of different ones giving different powers. So everyone's kind of doing sort of the same thing, but kind of branching off and doing slightly different things.
And combined with those factories, I also really enjoyed the contracts that players have. And the fact that you could go for the contracts, or you could even ignore them to some part, and every time that you rebooted your board, per se, you would get to take these bonus tiles and pick how you scored at the end of the game. I'm a huge fan of picking your own scoring methods and the contracts, and I love how in this game there are multiple routes to strategy.
Yes, I really like that too. I felt like the contracts were cool. It's interesting because Tom went for contracts that had that had victory points. First you went for money ones, then you went for
I like the fact that I can raise my income. Let's do it.
I went for strictly income raising ones with my contracts, and then I saved my points for putting things on the board and claiming board spaces. I didn't take any victory point contracts, and the fact that you have a choice, do you want contracts that give you boost your money, or do you want contracts that boost your victory points? It gives you a good choice of what you want to do.
Then the mechanism I did not like, Jason just touched on a little bit, is the game is essentially area control. That's a good chunk of the game. You cannot ignore it because you will get a good chunk of points from it. I don't know that will win you the game. Those bonuses at the end can win you the game if you play them properly.
Yes.
But the area control is a big part of the game, and it's just kind of funky. You are sending goods to a spot, so then you get to put a specific tile of that type there, and it can only go on one spot. And then the trains and the ships part, I like that. That's good. I like how the trains add in the ships. I just thought it was just a little too wonky for me. I guess I shouldn't say I don't like it, but I just was very meh on it.
Well, the interesting part of it, and yes, I agree it was the weakest mechanic of the game, but it was interesting at the same time, is that each of the spaces only has 4 of the 6 commodities, and each of the areas have 2 of those tiles. So there might be some areas that have nothing of the green commodity but have 2 things of the white commodity. So you have to kind of look at your factories, what you have and what you're producing, and you want to get those, because if I take the 2 white spaces out of the area, no one else could ever put their white victory point markers in those areas. So you now have control of the white completely in that area. So if you try to go for all the areas, you're not going to do well because you can't monopolize. But if you monopolize a lot of spaces in one area, then you know you're going to get the bonus for the most in that area.
And it also activates your ships.
And it activates your ships, which will get you even more bonus. But yeah, it was kind of a pressure luck, like not so much pressure luck, but you want to be the first one to get into an area, because if you don't get in there, you're never getting in there. Because if me and Tom are both producing the white good and I go to the area with the Tokyo area and I put in both of the spaces my white goods, now Tom can't ever produce white goods and compete in that area with the white goods, and he's got to go somewhere else. So it is a kind of, you want to get them out quickly mechanic.
All right, so overall, my opinions in the game are a little bit above. I would play this. I would rank it maybe a 6 out of 10. I didn't not enjoy it. Like I said, there's a couple things I didn't like, but the things I did like counterbalance them, and it has that thing of, oh, next time I'd try something different. The theme is okay. It's not themeless, but it's not super strong on the theme either. And like I said, the people, whatever. But overall, I thought the game was a decently designed one, although I suspect that it will fade into obscurity. I don't know if there's just anything about this game that people are going to go, amazing. I think it's decent, but I don't think it's much more than that. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It wasn't the greatest game. It wasn't on a phenomenal level. I give it an awesomeness rating of 7, which is pretty good. It's on the higher end, but it's not on the top end. And I enjoyed it a lot. I do want to play it at least 1 or 2 more times to see how different mechanics work. I like the way everything flowed together in the game. I agree with Tom. The thing that I liked the least was the area control part, because, well, I kind of monopolized it early, and I put all my area control down in areas so no one else could ever get in and beat me in points. But I'd like to play it again where everyone's competing for that equally, and then maybe I won't dominate some areas so much and see how it plays out then, and it might be a more balanced game. But I give it a decent rating. Like I said, awesomeness rating of 7.
All right, that's Nippon.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.